Good evening. Arlington Police Chief Will Johnson has fired the officer trainee who shot and killed an unarmed suspect at an Arlington car dealership.
Chief Johnson said he found decisions Officer Miller made that night, quote, troubling. He also described in detail the encounter between police and 19-year-old Christian Taylor early last Friday morning, including moments that led up to that shooting at the dealership showroom. Fox 4's Phil Alvarado was at the news conference which ended just a short time ago. Phil joining us now here first at 6. Phil.
Heather, we know more now about exactly what happened between 19-year-old Christian Taylor, who was shot and killed by now former Arlington police officer Brad Miller. The police chief told us in his news conference, as you said, that he found several troubling decisions that were made on the part of Miller. He says that police should never have gone in after Taylor once he was inside the dealership, that instead a perimeter should have been set up around the building. But police never had a chance to do that once Miller went in alone. Arlington Police Chief Will Johnson says once Christian Taylor crashed his car into the dealership and went inside, police should never have gone in after him. When Officer Brad Miller went in after Taylor, he used what he called inappropriate judgment and went against his training. The chief says Miller went in alone without telling any other officer that he was going in and without knowing if anyone else was in the building. Once inside, the chief says Miller pursued Taylor deeper into the building. The chief says that led to an unnecessary confrontation that led to the shooting.
Mr. Taylor was non-compliant with police commands. The video evidence available suggests Mr. Taylor exhibited abnormal behavior during this encounter. Mr. Taylor began lunging his body into the glass door multiple times in an effort to break the glass. Corporal Wiggins then discharged his taser because Mr. Taylor continued to advance towards Officer Miller. Officer Miller subsequently fired 3 additional times. Multiple officers did report that Mr. Taylor did have a bulge in his pocket when they first saw him. The nature of the bulge was unknown to officers at that time. After the shooting, the bulge was determined to be a wallet and a cell phone.
Chief Will Johnson says Miller told investigators that he thought he was alone and feared what might happen to him, but the chief says that was a result of Miller ignoring his training and going in alone. The chief says that Miller was working with a training officer, and once that training officer realized that Miller had gone in alone, he went in after him, trying to see, making sure that he was going to be okay. When Miller had the confrontation with Taylor, the chief says that what happened then was that the training officer went for his taser to try and use that, but by that time, Miller had already fired. Steve, Heather?
All right, so Phil, we've talked a lot about Officer Miller and his firing from the department. What about Corporal Wiggins? Any disciplinary action there at all?
Not that was mentioned by the chief. He says that there's still a lot more investigation to go. He says that, Miller, obviously was working with, the training officer, Wiggins. But he says that, really in a case like that, one of the things that the chief has said before was that even though you're still in training, that officer has, full responsibilities and powers of a regular police officer. And he just, as the chief said, used poor judgment.
Understood. All right, Phil Alvarado, appreciate your coverage. Thank you.